It could have been here. "You know they mate for life," said Mary. She was looking out the window of the ute as they followed the old couple they'd just met, out to the edge of town. "Who do? Old folks?" Joseph laughed. "No, you big goose. Galahs. See them there on the side of the road, eating the grain from the trucks that go through here? Always in pairs, unless there's been a tragedy." "A bird tragedy?" "Don't be cruel. It's romantic." "Yeah, I guess so," Joseph replied. He found it best to agree with Mary at the moment. She was pregnant, away from home, uncomfortable, and doing her best not to cry. He reached across, took her hand, and squeezed gently. "I reckon we must be a couple of galahs then." The perfect engagement he'd had planned hadn't exactly worked out that way. To be fair, when he'd gone to meet her parents to ask if it was okay to marry their 15-year-old daughter, Joseph hadn't really been expecting a positive response. "Is she pregnant?" her father had asked, cutting straight to the chase. "Dad!" Mary had been livid. Joseph had tried to calm things down. "No, of course not. We're in love." "In love? She's a bloody teenager and she's my daughter. How old are you?" 18. "Are you mad?" It had started to get heated before Mary's mother, Anne, stepped in. "Lay off the boy, Joe. We were in love at 15 and, as I remember it, we were pretty lucky I wasn't pregnant." She knew how to still a room. Mary's always known what she wants. She wants him. It's obvious he loves her, or he wouldn't be risking his life talking to you, would he? Everyone in town knows you go off like crackenite if you even see anyone looking at Mary. "I do not," shouted Joe, and then realised. He mumbled, "I don't know what you're talking about." "Why make them wait, love? You've known Joseph for years." "We all have," Anne said. "He's a good boy." That hadn't been the end of the talking, but in the end, Joe settled down. Anne hugged them both, and a date was set. Later, a hall and a caterer were booked, the bridesmaids were chosen and started making their dresses, all before Mary disappeared to the bush for 3 months. After the angel visited Mary, she'd known she had to get out of town and figure things out. The only people she knew who'd take her in were her Aunt Elizabeth and her Uncle Zek. Seriously religious folk. They lived in the scrub, and most people thought they were a bit mad anyway. He was a priest and she was an artist. It turned out that Elizabeth was pregnant too, and she was pretty old to be having a baby. Zek hadn't spoke since the doctor gave them the news. Shock does strange things. He was on stress leave from his church. Those months hadn't been too bad for Joseph. He'd gone on with his work and ignored the constant questions about where Mary was. And then one day, the letter came from Mary, giving him the news of the pregnancy. Mary had obviously taken a lot of care with the letter. She'd written all the right things and he wanted to believe her, but he'd nearly shot through. Feeling betrayed doesn't sit well with most young men, and Joseph had been hurting. He was sleeping in his swag outside when the angel had visited and told him to believe Mary. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he and Mary shed plenty of tears when they reunited. He'd apologised and told her all about it. They agreed it was probably better. They were now both officially crazy. The next day, home with her parents, Mary told them she was pregnant. And all hell broke loose. Well, Mary knew it wasn't Joseph, and Joseph knew it wasn't his. Mary had wanted to wait, and they had. No one believed either of them. All the talk about angels and dreams didn't help much either. Joe was on the warpath. It didn't feel like there was a single safe place in town. It wasn't long before Joseph lost his job. Mary had to leave school. Then, as the baby got close, the government sent them mail. If they wanted to keep getting income support, they needed to head north and try and find work in Joseph's old hometown, picking fruit. So, Saying goodbye to anyone who was still talking to them, they hit the road. Bumpy roads. Aircon on the fritz. The hottest 100 blasting out, exactly the sort of summer trip you only make when you have to. Certainly not when you're about to have a baby and your whole world has just fallen apart. When they got there, because the authorities had sent the same email to about 1,000 people, there wasn't a spare room in the whole town. By about 8 at night, having knocked on 100 doors, and with Mary starting to make strange noises, Joseph was just about ready to tell his angel exactly where to stick the good news. The old farming couple who found them sweating and worrying in the ute were, literally, a godsend. They tapped on the window. "What's the problem, darling?" the old girl had asked Mary, who had promptly burst into tears. Joseph had explained the situation. "Geez," the old bloke had said, "that's rough. And there's no room in the hospital with what with the influenza cases and 2 of the doctors being out of town." "Come and stay in our caravan," the woman had offered. "It's not much, but 2 of our kids were born in it, and when we were droving, which might tell you something about the vintage." She had a rich, deep laugh, and they had no better offers. The old couple lived in a tiny cottage surrounded by a huge paddock. The caravan stank of age and cats, but it was clean enough and had a bed and a sink, and there was an outside loo not too far away. Joseph got Mary settled, and a welcome cup of tea was delivered by their hosts. "Yell out if you need help with anything. We know our way around birthing if it comes to the crunch. Otherwise, see you in the morning." Joseph and Mary sat on the bed, listening to the sounds of the night. Animals rustling about, birds settling in, a distant truck, the creak of the van listing as they moved. "Well, this is going well," said Mary. Joseph just nodded. They looked at each other. Then they laughed until the tears came. When Mary's waters broke, it was mayhem, middle of the night, tripping over stumps in the paddock, calm old heads and terrified young ones. The effort and wailing and blood and joy, then a baby. A beautiful baby boy. A healthy mother. A gobsmacked father. A 30-year-old whiskey dragged from a cupboard, opened to toast the moment. A spot in time that changes everything. It was only about an hour before the drovers and the backpackers and the migrant workers started to arrive. "We saw the fireworks," they said, and no one had the energy to ask what they meant. "Thought there was a party on. Someone said we should come and see." They were sunburnt and tired. They were also kind. They held the baby and helped wash the linen clean. One was a mother who had watched her kids die in a foreign land before escaping in a boat with nothing to her name. She just sat with Mary and wept and laughed and spoke softly in broken English about what this child would mean for them. People brought their dogs who licked the baby's feet. Someone found a guitar and they sang songs from other worlds, other realities, other lives. Mary took the guitar and sung her song. It felt like it had been written for that night. For her son. For everyone there. No one left. The baby kept drawing them together. Next morning, they woke to the sound of galahs, flocks of them in the gum trees, all singing and calling. The old couple cooked breakfast for all their visitors on an old barbecue by the house. Mary slept. Joseph went to get disposable nappies. The sun rose on the most ordinary day. And nothing was ever the same again.